Welcome to the Ocean Race Summit Europe. I'm Danny Washington, your host for today. It's an honor to be here with you. I'm a TV presenter and science communicator originally from sunny Miami, Florida. I began my journey studying marine biology in college and transitioned into sharing stories about science and STEM subjects on national television. Much of my work has also focused on elevating youth leadership in ocean conservation. We were supposed to be streaming live from Brussels and meeting some of our speakers in person, but like many of you, we've had to adapt and adjust to the changing circumstances, just like the ocean racers who inspire us so much. So although I'm streaming live from Los Angeles, California, I'm delighted to still be able to connect virtually with all of our esteemed lineup of speakers who will be sharing their insights and solutions to help protect the ocean. The benefit of making this a virtual summit is that we can have more people join us from across the world, making the event more inclusive and far-reaching. A big welcome to everyone and a special warm welcome to those of you from our European host cities where the Ocean Race Europe has been stopping over the last few weeks. It's been a very exciting race, and we'll definitely speak about that soon. First, I want to make sure you're comfortable on our new events platform and can easily navigate. Be sure to make the event full screen so that you can get the best viewing experience. Hopefully, you already had a chance to do some online networking. If not, there will be an opportunity after the event for one-on-one chats, virtual meetings, or group meetings. The Race with Purpose team and I are also available after the event, so make sure you connect with us. Open the live event chat at the bottom of your screen to talk with everyone at the summit. We'll be posting links, polls, and more information about our different topics, so check them out. This is our fourth summit in our current series, following Newport and The Hague last year, and Genoa in 2019. We have previously discussed nature's rights and the notion of giving the ocean rights, and we'll continue exploring this throughout the series. And in the upcoming summits from 2021 to 2023, we'll be exploring ocean governance, the nexus of ocean and climate and ocean protection. As well as a fantastic lineup of speakers, we have 8 action labs in which we'll break into groups to take a deep dive into different issues relating to ocean health. Facilitated by experts in these fields, it's your chance to add your insights to help catalyze ocean protection. I hosted the most recent summit in Newport last September, and based on that experience, we should be in for some really inspiring conversations. And throughout today's summit, we will hear from mayors from the Ocean Race Europe's host cities that are committing to initiatives to help protect the ocean. Both the summits and Relay for Nature are helping to catalyze action in the places it visits. I'm here today with Race Chairman Richard Bricius and the EU Commissioner for the Environment, Ocean and Fisheries, and patron for the Ocean Race Europe, Virginijus Sinkevicius. Commissioner, thank you for joining us today. We're really looking forward to speaking with you throughout the event to discuss all things ocean and your insights and plans for a better ocean governance in the EU.
Thank you very much for having me, and of course it's a privilege and pleasure to join the discussions today, and I'm looking forward at another unique chance, I would say, that to dive deeper into our oceans and underline the importance, first of all, that they are our firm ally when we speak about climate change and fight against climate change.
Yes, and Richard, I'm thrilled to see you again. It's really hard to believe how fast time has flown by since our time together last year at the Newport Summit. So it's wonderful to see both of you today. It's so great to see both of you. So we know things are quite busy on your end, so thanks again for making time in your schedule to join us. This summit is linked with the inaugural edition of the Ocean Race Europe, which is finishing this week. The Ocean Race wanted to highlight the potential Europe has in leading the way in ocean health. I'd like to begin with hearing from Richard. So Richard, the Ocean Race is racing with purpose. What's that about?
Well, again, thanks, Danny, and thank you, Commissioner. It's just outstanding to be here with you today. And as you know, the Ocean Race around the world is the ultimate test of a team. And there are less people that have done this race than the amount of people who have actually climbed to the top of Mount Everest, to give an indication. And as a sailor in the Ocean Race, you get this special bond to the ocean, and you care for the ocean, and you respect the ocean. And the purpose of the Ocean Race is to unite people to achieve the extraordinary and to contribute to a healthier ocean and planet. And we call our program Racing with Purpose.
Super. And now you have a new race around Europe.
Yeah, we do. And actually right here behind me in the great port of Alicante, it was filled with 12 race boats and the best race crews from around the world, from around 30 countries, just the last weekend. And those teams are now racing on the final leg of the Ocean Race Europe. And there is a big battle going out on in the Mediterranean for the podium position. And the Ocean Race Europe is a new race to unite Europe and to bring sailors together who have extraordinary ambitions. And I've learned that truly great achievements are the result of people with great ambitions working together in teams and networks towards a clear goal. And that goes for sailing and it goes for life. So
Absolutely.
the question, what inspired us to do the Ocean Race Europe, is the knowledge about what a team can achieve. And early on in the pandemics, we realized that Europe has a powerful global role to play, as the commissioner is very central for the ocean, I should add. And we wanted to do our bit to this. So we decided, let's try to team up with European leaders. And today, some of the greatest of those you will meet. And I would say that was the birth of what is now the Ocean Race Europe.
Well, I feel extremely honored to be on this journey with the Ocean Race for the series of summits up until 2023. But Richard, what is the ultimate goal?
Yeah, Danny, I'm also honored and fortunate, I feel, every day to be on this journey. But as in sport, it is really our duty to always do our best on this journey when we have this opportunity. And in sport, we really like fair play and we like fair rules. And we see that we probably need a fair rule book for the high seas. We need even sharper governance and ocean management. So that is our goal. And our planet really needs us, all of us, to place the UN Sustainable Development Goal 14, life below water, at the top of the global climate and biodiversity agenda. And if you ask me, the ocean still receives far too little attention from world leaders. But together with us here today, we have an incredible gathering of experts and of organizations from around the world, all driving for better ocean protection and governance. And many have worked for years and decades for the oceans and done extraordinary things. And we want to join forces, work together with you, and look at the idea of what we call a universal declaration of ocean rights. And could that be the action needed to protect the ocean also beyond 2030?
Yes, and beyond the actual ocean race, I understand there's another race, or should I say relay, taking place that you're involved in. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's another one. And we're definitely in the race for the ocean. And this we call the Relay for Nature. And it's inspired by a torch relay, I would say. And this nature's baton, it's passed from sailor to sailor on boats and also on shore, visiting stopovers and gathering messages of urgency, calling on world leaders to radically increase ambitions and actions for the ocean, for biodiversity, and for climate change. And the Nature's Baton and the Relay for Nature arrives with the fleet to Genoa tomorrow. And we all acknowledge that this is a critical moment, and this decade of action that we have ahead of us is really here now. So it's time to act, and we are bringing the Nature's Baton and the messages it collects onwards to the IUCN Congress in Marseille, to the COP26 in Glasgow, and continue. That's the Relay for Nature.
Well, it is a critical time indeed, Richard. And Commissioner, you were also involved in the relay, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I was one of the first baton holders to join Richard in Klaipėda in Lithuania. Of course, I was very proud, and I'm also delighted to be the patron of the Ocean Race Europe. I think it's a good opportunity to send the message through to show that oceans is a common good which we all care about. It's not only about scientists or environmentalists. it's every European citizen who value oceans. And of course, when this message is also sent very clearly by people who does sports, who compete, I think it adds additional power.
Yes, it does. So, Commissioner, with the EU having one of the largest ocean territories, I'm sure protecting it is a big undertaking. But before we get into the practicalities and plans, I'd really like to ask you, what's your personal connection with the ocean?
Oh, I mean, I'm Lithuanian, and you know we have only 99 kilometers of the ocean shore, so you value every inch of it. And if you know you look back, probably as a child, first of all, I perceived it as a place where I connect my best memories every summer, going by the seaside and spending holidays there. Then I became a minister of economy. And I suddenly realized how important spot is actually our Klaipėda port and what it really brings. Then I went deeper into really understanding that culturally and historically it was a gate of which shaped Lithuania as it is now. And finally now, of course, as a commissioner responsible for oceans, I have a very clear duty to make sure that we advance, we leave oceans cleaner, healthier for future generations, and that oceans and their ecosystems they serve and provide us with invaluable support as regards of the climate change issues.
Yes, and speaking of future generations, I understand that you have a young son that also loves to spend time in the ocean. What type of future do you envision for him and this new generation? And what are you hoping the state of the ocean will be when your son grows up?
Probably that's the most important where I should start. My firm duty is to make sure that this planet is habitable and the oceans are clean and healthy. But I'm very proud of our young generations because they really do and understand things which took us some time to realize. And already today, you know, my son is usually shocked when he sees someone on the beach using a plastic straw, for example. He will always pick up a trash on the beach and won't understand the reason why someone could leave it. So I think we have a great generation coming up who will love the oceans and will do utmost. But we have to make sure that we leave them them clean and that they could enjoy those beauty of the oceans, like a coral reefs and so on.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Richard. We'll see you both again shortly.
Thank you.
Well, let's get things started by examining ideas on how to revamp ocean governance. The European Union is a leading player in sustainable development and has already adopted more than 200 pieces of legislation that are directly related to marine environmental policy and management. However, a study titled Marine Legislation, the Ultimate Horrendogram, and yes, that term is quite fitting for this type of diagram, shows the huge number of different measures aiming to tackle the impact of human activities on the marine environment. But maritime affairs are often dealt with by separate sectoral policies without fully integrating all the relevant sectors. So in a nutshell, there is a need for more connection between these various sectors and policies. This compartmentalized and fragmented approach doesn't seem to be working, or it's not giving the protection the ocean really needs. Thanks to our understanding of marine science, we know that the ocean is interconnected, which naturally requires an integrated and holistic approach. So here to talk about how we can revamp ocean governance is Pascal Lamy, president of the Paris Peace Forum and chair of the EU Mission Starfish 2030 board. Mr. Lamy, hello.
Hello, good to see you.
Great to see you as well. So let's jump right in. The Mission Starfish report has a highly ambitious target to revamp ocean governance. What is Mission Starfish and what does revamping ocean governance mean and how can it be achieved?
Well, Mission Starfish is a broad and comprehensive action plan, the ambition of which is to regenerate the EU hydrosphere by 2030. What I mean by hydrosphere is the whole of water systems, ocean, seas, lakes, rivers, everywhere there is water in Europe. And we know it works as a system. So it's a proposal which is now on the table of the European Commission. We know we have the support of Commissioner Sinkevičius, who just talked, and I've been talking with my colleagues and him quite a long time for the last 18 months in structuring this big action plan. We've given it the name of Starfish because what we have to do in Europe to regenerate our degraded hydrosphere is like the 5 legs of a starfish. They have to be there together for the animal to live. They have to be there for this mission to happen. 3 of them have to do with very precise actions: zero pollution, decarbonization of the EU blue economy, regeneration of a number of degraded habitats and zones in the hydrosphere. One of them has to do with science, knowledge, citizens' science involvement, and one of them, which you can see now on this picture, has to do with governance. That's my answer to your first part of your question. To the second part of your question, what have we suggested as far as revamping ocean, water, the hydrosphere governance in Europe, which, as you rightly said, is all over the place, sort of big bazaar, maybe not as big a bazaar as globally, and I was a member of the Global Ocean Commission who tried to put a bit of rationality in the global ocean governance. It led to SDG 14, it led to having Peter Thompson as UN Special Envoy. In Europe, we still have a mess, in a way. And what we proposed were 4 things. One, create an integrated EU system of ocean and water governance, a single one, to oversee the implementation of the Starfish mission if the Commission decides to push on the launch button sometime around mid-July. Second, deploy EU external instruments at the service of a better global ocean governance, and the EU has a number of these instruments. Third, develop what we call an EU maritime strategic autonomy, which is about connecting marine on the civil side, marine on the military side, in order to improve the security of the maritime space of the EU, which, as you said, is a very, very large one. And finally, last but not least, to create a network of citizens' assemblies to enable citizens, stakeholders to input, to participate in the implementation of this Starfish mission. So this is a very ambitious set of proposals. So far, the Commission has embarked on part of that.
Wonderful. So out of those different components, Mr. Lamy, what do you think is one of the most important takeaways from Mission Starfish when it comes to ocean governance and the Green Deal targets?
I think so far, there will be major takeaways in the future if the Commission pushes the launch button. So far, what they've done, which is, in my view, a big step forward, which is already an existing result of the preparation which we did with colleagues, NGOs, stakeholders, is that they've invented a new system of governance within the Commission with mission teams, mission managers that cut across all the departments of the Commission, that cut across all the portfolios of the commissioners so that regenerating the EU hydrosphere, which implies investment plans, regulations, science, innovation, a lot of EU policies are integrated. And I think that's the first step. It's not exactly where we want to go in terms of ambition, but let me say that for the first time, they've quickly decided to, having understood that the 5 legs of the starfish have to do together, they've put the starfish in the hands of a mission team that integrates these whole approaches. And I think this is already something very positive.
Absolutely. So for those of you watching, if you'd like to take a deep dive into Mission Starfish Report, we've added a link with the downloadable PDF in the chat. So thank you very much for your insight, Mr. Lamy.
My pleasure.
As mentioned by Richard Brisius, the Relay for Nature is fully underway with Ocean Race Europe. Let's take a look at what's been happening so far. Then, right after that, we'll hear from offshore Team Germany sailor Annie Lusch, who is currently racing towards the finish line at Genoa.
Welcome to the inaugural Ocean Race Europe.
The oceans are in crisis.
We're doing damage that's irreversible.
We need to go from words to action.
We can see a lot of plastic.
We need more protected areas
in our hands.
Cannot be a healthy planet without a healthy ocean.
My message for the baton is for everyone to understand how important it is that we educate people about the ocean, the massive role that it plays in sustaining life on Earth and particularly in climate change. The problem for the ocean is it doesn't have a voice that we can hear, and it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Most people are quite aware of perhaps issues on land or protecting the rainforest or something, or shrubland near their farmlands, things they can see, but not many people actually go out into the ocean. And so I suppose it's very easy to ignore it, but it's vital and it doesn't have a voice, so we've got to find a way to give it a voice. It does have its own rights. The whole ecosystem that lives there, including the animals, but also all the plankton, I mean everything that's fundamental to our life needs to have a voice. So yeah, I think it's really important we don't just see it as an object. It's a living ecosystem, and someone's got to stand up for it. The first time I sailed into the Southern Ocean, which I think is one of the most remote places you can go to on Earth, and was with Team SCA in the 2014-15 Ocean Race. We were battling, trying to sort of sail upwind. I think it was about 50 knots. There was some hail. I was trying to drive, and I was dressed in all the latest Gore-Tex gear on the latest boat with a helmet on, and we were really struggling to kind of make headway. And then this albatross was just flying around the boat, sort of gliding gracefully past the forestay. I almost felt like it was laughing at us, like it had no problem just surviving in these really extreme conditions. It didn't need any kind of special Gore-Tex clothing or carbon boat. And yeah, that was a real moment of realizing how small we are and how huge the ocean is and all of the life that it has. We don't really know anything about it. There's a whole world out there that, yeah, it just goes on without us. The sad thing is we're having such an impact on it. So the sailors in the Ocean Race Europe are trying to play their part in many ways. On board, 3 of the boats have scientific equipment to measure the amount of carbon dioxide in the ocean. And this is sort of vital information. You know, we get to go to places that no one else really does, and will lead towards putting together a sort of carbon dioxide audit to see how important the Mediterranean is in absorbing carbon dioxide, and really how important the Mediterranean is in helping with the climate change issue. There's also a learning program, I suppose, really trying to educate everyone from what we see. It's fantastic. We have onboard reporters on board, and we get to see parts of the ocean no one does, and how special it is. And also, unfortunately, a lot of the plastic and the things that we see in the ocean. So I think this footage is vital just to help educate people in what's really out there and what's really going on. So the Ocean Race has developed an incredible learning program. It's got a whole load of resources to really engage kids in what the sailors are doing and how important the ocean is, the impact the ocean has on climate change. I'm actually teaching at the moment. I'm a geography teacher in Mallorca, where I live. So I have my own sort of passion for learning, really, and teaching. And my class are actually following us in this race. They're currently studying the 17 UN Goals for Sustainable Development, one of which is very, very connected to the ocean. So we're using these resources created by the Ocean Race Europe, and yeah, you should go and look at them online, because if you're a teacher, it's a fantastic resource. I think for all of us, just going out in the water was just the sense of freedom that you don't get to have normally when you're a child. You know, people always looking out for you, and when you're out there in your little boat, you're just in control. And that stayed really throughout my whole career. There's nothing quite like just being out there.
That is so fantastic. And as you can see, things are changing rapidly here in Los Angeles. The sun is about to rise over the mountains. It's just a beautiful day here in California. But it's even more wonderful to see all of the teams that are getting involved and collaborating with scientists and government leaders in this greater mission for the ocean. Collaboration is key in these global challenges. Awareness and education is also essential. Seeing Annie inspiring the next generation of ocean champions and sailors through her work as an educator is simply amazing. What an inspiration. Awesome. So next up, we'll be joined by another sailor who is aiming to lead and inspire sustainability within the sporting sector. I'm excited to be joined by Mark Towell, CEO of 11th Hour Racing Team, who is currently in Genoa, waiting for his team to come in very soon. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Danny, how are you? Nice to see you again.
Great to see you again, and reconnecting since we saw each other last in September during the Ocean Race Summit in Newport. I'm really excited for 11th Hour Racing Team in Europe.
Yeah, we just got to Genoa last night, and it's been a really interesting event. I'm actually on shore for this time, but following the racing has been incredible. It's been quite a wide variety of conditions, everything from 40 knots sailing through Gibraltar into some of the light air as they're making their way up to Genoa. And we've got a three-way tie at the top, so it's going to be an exciting final 24 hours.
Definitely exciting times. And in the final leg of the race, how's the team doing?
Yeah, they're doing well. I think anytime you're sailing in a patch of light air for an extended period of time, it requires an immense amount of mental focus. And in addition, it's been quite hot out there, so I think they're very eager to get in and have a shower and probably cool off a little bit.
I bet. So, Mark, this is your third race campaign with the Ocean Race, and once again, your team is taking a strong leadership role, not just within the sailing community, but also within the wider marine industry.
Yeah, today is actually a really exciting day for our campaign. Beyond the fact that we're in the final stages of this leg, we are today launching our sustainability toolbox, and that's a really monumental moment for us. The sustainability toolbox is a suite of how-to guides, case studies, and templates, and really the goal is to try to create a framework for any organization that wants to try to build out a sustainability program. One thing we found is that everyone is generally very interested in the topic, but sometimes struggle to figure out exactly how to get started. And we've been very fortunate that we have a sustainability program within our team, and through a lot of collaboration have built out a framework to help any organization in any industry start their sustainability journey.
Excellent. That is so exciting, Mark. And I know you all have been really busy because you recently published an annual sustainability report, which showed the fact that you all were maximizing the additional year of prep that you've had thanks to COVID. But that, other than the launch, can you tell us a little bit more about what exactly the Sustainability Toolbox is?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Sustainability Toolbox is really an extensive piece of collaborative work. We've been working on it for the last 18 months and collaborating with people across many different sectors. So in some ways it's been led by our team, but really has been had a lot of people contributing to it. The way it works is there's 8 stages, and it's, again, really meant to help any organization or business who wants to build out a sustainability program take you through that journey. So it starts with different stages, and within each one, there's case studies, there's templates, there's sample tracking spreadsheets, all the tools that you should need to get going on that journey. And really our hope is that we can build out a community as this expands. We've been really surprised and inspired by how many people have signed up. Even within the last 24 hours, we've had over 100 registered organizations, and from a wide variety of different places. We've had a solar company in India, the Special Olympics and the Paralympic class, a lot of people in the marine industry. So there's definitely some strong interest for this, and the long-term vision is that we can leave a legacy and try to create a community around pushing these topics forward.
Wow. Well, that sounds like an incredible resource. We've placed a link in the chat for all of you tuning in to check out the Sustainability Toolbox from 11th Hour Racing Team. So whether you're a sailing team, sports facility, or just a curious individual, this toolbox sounds like it's worth exploring. So you can find out more all about the toolbox with the 11th Hour Racing Team sustainability crew in the networking rooms after the closing of the event. So Mark, thanks again for joining us and taking the time in the midst of the race to say hi and to tell us about the new announcement. Thank you very much. Please send my best to the rest of the 11th Hour Racing Team.
Will do. Thanks, Danny. Ciao from Genoa.
We've seen how sailors are doing their part in revamping ocean protection, and now let's explore what some government leaders are doing to safeguard the ocean. Shortly, we'll hear how the European Commission plans to help protect this precious resource. But first, let's take a trip to the tropics, where I previously connected with the former president of Palau, Tommy Remengesau. Palau has been leading the charge in ocean protection with their bold steps, serving as a great example of how other nations can conserve what we have left. President Remengesau, you have created an incredible legacy. Can you tell me more about how Palauan heritage influenced these laws and policies, and how other countries can learn from Palau's culture of conservation?
You know, when you live in a small island setting surrounded by vast oceans, you're actually from a large ocean state. And with it comes the large and great responsibility of making sure that the health of the ocean continues to sustain life as we know it on the islands. Throughout our history, our culture and traditions have always taught us that you must think about the future. Don't just think about yesterday and today, think about the future. And so from early age, we are taught that conservation is a large part of who we are and whether we survive as an island people and as island countries. That's why it's important that our laws reflect those values. And so we have been able over the years to put those traditional practices, those values, to become the law of the land. That's why we did the Palau National Marine Sanctuary, which fully protects 80% of our territorial waters, something like 500,000 square kilometers of fully protected area. We understood the intertwined and interdependence relationship of the coral reefs and the vast ocean. We knew there's a value of protecting the fish so that they can move on to other places. There's a spillover factor very much behind the scientific value of protecting the ocean so that other open areas can also thrive. We also did the Palau Awareness or the Palau Pledge. It makes sense that this is an international partnership, that visitors and friends who come to Palau also share in the responsibility with our children to fully protect the ocean, fully protect the environment, so that we can all live in a world that now depends on the good health of the ocean in order to survive. That's the value of what we have done in putting traditional and cultural values to become the law of the land. I know a lot of countries are faced with similar challenge of how we can fully protect the next generation. You know, a wise man once said, the environment and the ocean is not really our inheritance to enjoy only. We are actually borrowing it from our future children. And that's the way we should think about it. The climate crisis is the #1 challenge for the future of the world. Countries need to have stronger and robust laws for them to protect their waters, protect their environment, and protect their people. But at the same time, in doing so, they will also be mitigating the problems and the impacts that their actions are also having on smaller island nations like Palau and the rest of the Pacific. So there's an intertwined, an interdependence relationship and partnership that must be in place if we are to ensure that, yes, there is a bright future for our children.
You're a father of 4 and a grandfather of 6, and after 16 years as head of state, what are some of your hopes for the future and for future generations globally?
My hope actually is with the younger generation, because when I look at what needs to be done, I hear the voices of the young people much stronger than the leadership and the generations of the leadership. Our hopes is that they grow up to take the responsibility of the government, the private sector, and the NGOs, and truly accelerate the pace of actions that needs to take place. And I'm very heartened, I'm very pleased when I see the movements of many generations of youth today, you know, fighting for a better future for them. To me, it takes the heart first before the action comes. And that's my one wish, that's my hope, and that's my dream.
What a fantastic legacy to leave. Now, President Remengosau is out of office. He told us that he's returned to life as a fisherman, but he's still devoted to protecting the ocean through a number of initiatives, such as the Remengosau Foundation, which is committed to working with young people. He's also a member of the Council of Chiefs and continues to work with the wisdom and knowledge of the chiefs in order to fully protect the ocean and do important work with the government. And more recently, he was invited to be an ambassador with the Pew Bertarelli Ocean Legacy Foundation, working with other ocean leaders, spreading the message that we all need to work in partnership in all sectors to truly make a difference. Thank you, President Remengosau. So let's sail back to Europe, where we're honored to have a leader in ocean protection, the Minister for Ecological Transition in Spain, Teresa Ribera, here to discuss ocean protection, along with welcoming back the EU Commissioner of Environment, Ocean and Fisheries, Virginijus Sinkevicius. Let's jump right into the specifics of how the EU plans to protect the ocean. So, Deputy Prime Minister Ribera, where does Spain stand in effective protection of 30% of national waters and the 30 by 30 movement?
We are working hard. Hello, it's a great pleasure to see you all and to follow this conversation that you have organized in such an attractive manner with so many committed people. We are working hard because we know, as a country surrounded by water, by the ocean, we know that our economy, our welfare, our prosperity, but also those of who are to come, depend on the healthy states of the ocean. And it is important for the climate, it's important for the biodiversity, but as I say, it is also important in an egoist manner for us, humankind. So we have been working hard in a program that tries to understand how we can characterize those areas that we want to protect. There's a symbolic reference to achieve 30% of the ocean surface being protected by 2030. We are working to define these areas to raise the bar up to 15% in 2023 and up to almost 22% in 2025, so that we can achieve this goal by 2030. And this program, what we call INTEMARES, Integrated Project to Identify Biodiversity, the state of the waters and so on, is convening very interesting people and research on how best we can learn what we have. And after that, it's what it matters, how we can define with the protection of the rules, the protection of the law, but also the compatibility of the different activities in those areas that are not protected. We can ensure a proper level of state, for the ocean.
Excellent. Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. So, Commissioner, I'd also like to hear more about the EU's commitment to the 30 by 30 goals. With fewer than 1% of European marine protected areas fully off limits to fishing, are there specific blue parks within the EU that will be established in order to help us reach this 30% goal by 2030?
So, at our biodiversity strategy for 2030, which is, I think, the most ambitious document that we have the ambitious goal of protecting 30% of the EU seas. And at the moment, as an example, we are at around 12% with national protected areas and with Natura 2000 areas. So now, of course, member states will cooperate very closely in defining those areas which could be protected. And together, of course, member states, stakeholders are currently consulting and finalizing the most important criteria, because we don't want it to only establish and call a 30% protected areas. We want to really protect it and ensure that it's monitored, it's taken care of. And by 2024, of course, we will take stock where we are. Are we on, let's say, on a track to reach that goal?
Awesome. Now, swinging back over to Deputy Prime Minister, moving a little further from home in Spain, how do you plan to lead in protecting Antarctica?
We have been, together with other colleagues from different regions of the world, insisting on the importance of the protection of the Antarctica. And there, the areas are already very well identified, thanks to the cooperation coming from different countries. And I think that what it is important is to focus on that purpose, on that objective, because it is true that what we think about the Antarctica is research, is peace, is multilateral cooperation, but it is also a biodiversity reservoir and a very symbolic climate thermostat. So it is important to achieve this goal. We have been working hard while we were presiding the conference of the CAMLAR, so working on the Antarctic Treaty. But now we have a new opportunity to provide some support to our colleagues from Sweden who are in charge of this task, because we want to celebrate that 30 years ago, we had a great success dealing with the Antarctica in Madrid, with the Protocol of Madrid to protect the biodiversity in the Antarctic area. And I think that it is time to stocktake what we have achieved, what it is still missing, and how we are looking into the future. And we would be delighted to share views and to identify whatever concern there may be in some of our colleagues who are also signatories of these very important treaties around the Antarctica.
Wonderful. Commissioner, the Baltic Sea Action Plan is unique with the number of governments coming together to agree to protect this specific water basin, so including your own Lithuanian government. Do you think we could learn from this initiative when we look at protecting Antarctica and the Arctic? And how will the EU support protection of these important regions and the high seas?
So absolutely, it's a good example. First of all, it's a good example because of cross-sectoral cooperation, because countries which share the coast of the Baltic Sea, and especially their ministers, agreed to work together. And ministers responsible not only for environment, which is, you don't need an extra effort convincing them, but actually ministers responsible for agriculture, ministers responsible for fisheries. and they all signed a declaration with clear goals, which has to be reached. And this year we will take stock of what happened through the year. But most important, that everyone is rowing the same direction, and out of that, the Baltic Sea will only benefit. Now, speaking, of course, about Antarctica, and I'm very thankful that Teresa is here. She's a great leader and an inspiration. She was hosting the chair of CAMELA not so far ago. And in April, I hosted a ministerial meeting with most ambitious countries, where we, of course, discussed our way forward in establishing marine protected areas in East Antarctica and Weddell Sea. And that would be unprecedented marine protected areas, by far the largest in the world. And what I'm particularly glad about that New Zealand and the US joined as the co-sponsors, of course, throwing their weight behind our proposal. And I think this also gives additional boost. We'll definitely going to do more. I hope that we're going to have another ministerial in September, where by that time we will outreach to other CAMELA members. And then, of course, we're going to have a meeting of the parties, where Sweden is going to host it as a chair. And hopefully we'll be able to reach an agreement. Speaking about the Arctic policy, I'm particularly happy that we have an international agreement on protecting unregulated high seas fisheries in the central Arctic Ocean. And I'm pleased to share with you that this agreement kicks in from the 25th of June. And that's a very positive step.
A positive step indeed. And can you provide just a few more specifics, please, especially regarding the United Nations Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction Agreement, BBNJ?
With regard of the BBNJ, or so-called the High Seas Agreement, I'm very much attached to, of course, reaching a speedy conclusions. Yes, the pandemic prevented us from live meetings, from tough negotiations, but I think a lot has been done, and it's time to really move forward and finally reach agreement and protect the high seas, because at the moment we're trying and we're doing relatively well what is close to our shores and close to country shores, but when it comes to high seas, unfortunately, it's so much to be done. And of course, I'm looking forward for another date to be set of intergovernmental conference, where we, of course, be pushing for agreement to be reached.
Well, thank you for answering that, Commissioner. One final question for you. We heard from Pascal Lamy about revamping ocean governance in the proposed Mission Starfish report for the European Commission and its ambitious targets. What does revamping ocean governance mean to you, and how will it help the Green Deal?
First of all, let me thank Pascal and his team for an excellent work and for their report, because it really fits in very well with our Green Deal objectives, putting a spotlight on the oceans, which undeservedly often is forgotten. We have started preparation to update our international governance agenda, and we are in the middle of our consultation. So, of course, the report will perfectly fit in. In the EU, we think that we have to, of course, first of all, lead by example, and our 30% protection goal, our common fisheries policy of sustainable fishing is something where this is the must homework which we have to do, and of course lead by example. It's going to be a very challenging, because more and more will be pressure on oceans. If you look of our further renewable energy needs, if you look that the fisheries is also providing us with nutritious food. and of course, the shipping and so on will continue as an activity. So the pressures will only increase. And here, importantly, will come our role to ensure that seas and oceans are not treated as the first come, first serve, but really we would make sure that we have a balanced approach. But most importantly, we ensure a healthy ecosystems.
Definitely. Deputy Prime Minister, do you have a few parting words for us?
Please, yes. Now, I would like to make a final comment on the idea of reaching a Blue New Deal. I think that we talk very much about Green New Deal, and at the end, we may introduce this concept. As the Commissioner was saying, it is important to make the connection with what it happens in the ocean, because most of the pollution, most of the problems that the ocean suffer come from inland. So I think that we need to reconnect what this means, strengthening our capacities at the regional level. And some of the pollution that suffers the ocean come from the maritime transport and what we call the blue economy. Why we do not think the blue economy in a much more greener way? I think that this is quite a challenge. I think that we have been introducing and strengthening the connections, the dots between climate and the ocean agenda, and we may connect also with everybody in the world thinking, hey, the new green is the blue, but the blue needs to get a little bit more greener in our action.
I love that. Thank you so much. Many thanks to both of you for joining us today. We really appreciate your insights.
Bye.
Bye. Next up, we're going to hear from some of the leaders in the Ocean Race Europe's host countries and their ocean protection initiatives.
El mar forma parte de la identidad de Alicante y de la Comunidad Valenciana. Y hoy más que nunca debemos hacer frente a la emergencia climática, construyendo estrategias para construir economías sostenibles. Desde la Generalitat Valenciana apostamos por la conservación ambiental y la economía azul. La situación de nuestros mares y océanos afecta a todo el mundo. Necesita cooperación y alianzas entre regiones, administraciones y sectores públicos y privados. Y sobre todo lo que necesita es investigación, innovación e inversión. Por eso, hoy les anuncio que nuestra comunidad es una de las 4 autonomías a las que el Ministerio de Ciencia ha aprobado 4 proyectos elegibles para fondos europeos. Uno de ellos es el de sostenibilidad del medio marino, que pondremos en marcha este mismo año 2021. Tendrá un presupuesto de 50 millones de euros en total, de los cuales 10 corresponden a la Comunidad Valenciana. Y vamos a trabajar en la monitorización del medio marino, la acuicultura sostenible e inteligente, la economía azul. Y además lo vamos a hacer en cooperación con otras 4 comunidades autónomas, con Andalucía, Cantabria, Galicia y Murcia. Apostamos por nuestros océanos y confiamos en la ciencia para preservarlos.
The City of Stockholm is committed to ensuring safe and clean water quality for people and the planet. Therefore, Stockholm is investing 900 million euros in updating its wastewater treatment plant to become one of the world's largest state-of-the-art membrane technology systems. And this project is necessary for us to cope with the rapid population growth and the technology that can help us attain the much-needed requirements regulated in the Baltic Sea Action Plan and the EU Water Framework and Bathing Directives, which will protect our surrounding waters. Nitrogen emissions are reduced by 40% and emissions of microplastic are reduced to almost zero. To strengthen Stockholm's resilience to heavy rain and downpours, the project will update the infrastructure to collect wastewater, which will reduce the amount of untreated water that ends up in the sea. And we are excited to implement this new system, which will be completed by 2029, helping to keep our water clean for future generations. And we encourage other nations to also consider their water infrastructure plans in our blue-green recovery.
It's truly fantastic to see these compelling actions being taken in the host cities, the Ocean Race Europe, and these important commitments to innovation and protecting the ocean. What an exciting experience so far. Now, before we continue, I'd like everyone to take a moment to breathe together. Oh yeah, we're reminded that that second breath we just took in was provided by the ocean. This simple fact always inspires a deeper conversation, exploring how we can show greater reverence for the ocean today and every day. What a beautiful reminder of why we're gathered here today. Many of us have different ways of showing reverence by applying our own skills and knowledge to the mission of ocean protection. But one particular action is necessary, a necessary step towards solidifying true respect for the ocean. Rights for the ocean itself. Our human society provides a plethora of inalienable rights to individuals and communities, but there is still much work to be done in this arena when it comes to nature and the ocean. Here to explain a bit more about the fundamentals of nature's rights and Earth jurisprudence, Mamta Ito is joining us. Mamta is the founder of NGO Nature's Rights and a leading expert and advocate for the rights of nature. Greetings, Mamta. We're so thrilled to have you here.
Hi, it's really a pleasure to be here today, Danny. Thank you.
Yes, so Mamta, what are the rights of nature and how can they transform society?
So the rights of nature are the idea that if a corporation can have legal personality and rights, why not an ecosystem? But it's so much more than just that. It's about using law as a vehicle for societal transformation and re-establishing ourselves in the web of life as a regenerative and a healing presence on the planet. The rights of nature actually form the fundamental basis of our own human right to life, from which all of our other rights and freedoms emanate. Yet, we don't even acknowledge it in our legal system. And this is why we have the problem. If we look at our current society as an iceberg, we see only what is visible above the waterline, all the interrelated crises. But what we don't see are the invisible structures and systems, the paradigms of thought and consciousness that generate these results on autopilot. What happens below the waterline is a degenerative cycle based on separation consciousness that leads to a mechanistic paradigm and fragmented systems that work in isolation to each other, like you pointed out earlier. At present, the law doesn't recognize a relationship between us and the rest of nature, yet it's our most fundamental relationship. In law, nature is treated as objects, property, and resources rather than the source of life. And this is what actually makes it legal to have an economic system based on infinite growth, an agricultural system that poisons the earth and getting our energy in ways that deplete nature faster than she can replenish. All our societal solutions, however, act on the top level, the tip of the iceberg, on crisis management. But to get a lasting solution, we must also act on the lower levels of the iceberg. And for that, we need the law. We need the law to be on our side. Instead of legalizing and institutionalizing harm, which is what is happening at the moment, law has to scale up regenerative solutions. And it must also protect life over interests, which is what we do with nature's rights. We change the paradigm, we transform the system, and most importantly, embody the change. So we start with unity consciousness, with the human being part of nature, embedded in the radically interconnected web of life, which leads to a holistic paradigm, whole system structures, which give very different results. When embedded at all levels of law and across all policy areas, an earth-centered, relational, and ecological approach to lawmaking scales up regenerative results on autopilot. Nature's rights reorientates the whole of society to pull in the same direction, bringing lasting systemic change.
Thank you, Mamta. And before we move on to our panel, can you just briefly talk about how this is different from environmental law?
Sure. So environmental law operates in isolation to the other major laws and policies that affect nature, like the laws affecting economy, agriculture, energy, and so on. It acts at the periphery to manage the externalities, the worst effects of a destructive system, whilst leaving the system itself intact. Nature's rights, on the other hand, is about fundamental rights. So it works at all levels of law across all the key policy sectors that impact nature to address the root causes of destruction and to drive systemic change. Also, another point to note is that environmental law is human-centered and it takes a reductionist approach to complex adaptive systems like nature and human societies, which don't behave in a linear or a quantifiable manner. So with nature's rights, we take a relational, an ecosystemic, and a precautionary approach to deal with complexity in an increasingly unpredictable and uncertain world. And in this way, I feel that nature's rights is the next evolutionary step in environmental law, and it is something that will unite and will strengthen all of the other initiatives to protect nature.
That's a brilliant explanation, Mamta. Thank you for that. So to build further context for our upcoming panel discussion, let's take a look at a case study happening now in Spain and how understanding ecocide can help elevate the rights of nature onto the global stage.
To recognize the crime of ecocide as one main purpose is really to prevent further damages and restore the ecological balances that we destroyed. We don't look after the idea of putting person in jail. What we want is to have a legal frame which explains that some industrial activities today should be banned if we really want not to cross the planetary boundaries, if we really want to protect nature on the long term. And so the crime of ecocide is really the crime which is missing in international law today, to regulate all the activities and to oblige the corporates and the states to disinvest in fossil fuels, to stop, for example, in the ocean, industrial fishing, to stop mining everywhere without any due diligence. We really need today to ask the states to protect the ecosystems where they have an impact.
Pues mira, el Mar Menor es la mayor laguna salada del Mediterráneo. La riqueza y el valor ecológico de esta laguna hace que goce de figuras de protección, de figuras legales de protección, tanto en el ámbito nacional como europeo e internacional. A pesar de todo esto, el Mar Menor ha estado sufriendo una crisis ecológica que lo ha colocado al borde del colapso. Esta gran crisis se debe a un modelo de desarrollo desde los años 70 que no ha tenido en cuenta las leyes naturales de la laguna y las necesidades ecológicas de la laguna. Por ejemplo, toda la basura de la minería cargada de metales pesados, un desarrollo urbanístico salvaje alrededor de la laguna y en sus riberas, un modelo intensivo industrial de agricultura que contiene nitratos en las sustancias agroquímicas.
My hope is that the crime of ecocide will permit to recognize a legal statute to the commons, the natural commons, and specifically the oceans, the high seas. Why? Because the high seas are not under the sovereignty of any states, but are exploitable by everyone.
Si el Mar Menor consigue derechos, el Mar Menor será respetado teniendo en cuenta su propia estructura interna, su propia funcionalidad y sus necesidades ecológicas. Esto significa que la vida del Mar Menor tendrá derechos en las mismas condiciones que tiene derechos la vida ficticia de las entidades mercantiles y las corporaciones y de las personas que somos los principales agentes contaminantes de esta entidad natural. Lo cual significa que reconocemos la verdad ecológica de que la naturaleza no pertenece al ser humano, sino que el ser humano es una especie más que pertenece a la naturaleza. Por tanto, es un avance en igualdad, es un avance en paz y es un avance en una vida en armonía con el medio natural.
The crime of ecocide, if it is recognized, will permit to sue states or corporates when they commit ecocide within high seas. More media, more politicians, more parliamentarians, and even the Pope now request to recognize the crime of ecocide. So I believe that this crime will be recognized in the next decade.
These interesting initiatives make you wonder how approaching ocean protection from a different perspective and framework might actually work. Here to discuss more on this, Mamta and I are joined by Kilian Lohan, Vice President in charge of communication in the European Economic and Social Committee, and Marie Toussaint, a Green member of the European Parliament. Welcome to you all.
Hello.
Kilian, I might start with you. Why were the European Economic and Social Committee interested in undertaking the study on the fundamental rights of the Nature Charter for the EU?
Sure. Thanks, Danny. Thanks for having me here today. Well, firstly, the boring bit to explain what the European Economic and Social Committee is. It's one of the EU institutions, and we're made up of representatives of civil society organisations. So our role is to give the perspective of civil society to the legislators at an EU level. So effectively, we respond to proposed laws and say where the proposals could be improved. And one area of interest that I worked on was on the subject of climate justice. That's what led me to work on the nature's rights issue, because I wrote there about what we mean by justice or fairness in terms of climate action. And quickly we got to the point that within our societies, we have a means of ensuring fairness that is our justice system, as Mamta has just described. And it's part of our systems, part of our societal structures. And in that system, we give recognition and legal personality to people and to corporations. Now, looking at this in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals and our Sustainable Development Commitments, we have three distinct elements to that which require balance, namely the people or the social element. Then we have the economy and the business element. And both of these, as I've said, are recognized within our judicial system. But there's a third element, the environment or nature, which is not recognized, at least not to the extent that we want it to be. Therefore, it was a very pragmatic approach to propose that it's essential to ensure fairness and justice, that we need to give recognition in terms of rights and legal personality to nature. Indeed, my feeling is that there's a certain irrationality in having systems that undermine nature, because we have a society and communities completely locked in with the economy. If you have economic problems, you have social problems, and the economic systems are primarily linear, based on extraction of raw materials from nature, powered primarily by energy sourced from nature, a model that has led us to the current crisis of climate and biodiversity, both of which are on the brink of collapse, not to overstate the problem. So this logically led me to want to commission a study, as you asked, on a Charter of Fundamental Rights for Nature, to try and achieve balance, for consistency with Sustainable Development Goals, for fairness and for justice. And we were very lucky to have somebody like Mamta to take a leadership role in developing this kind of study. And let me just say that approaching the rights-based approach for me is a very practical way to achieve systemic change. We talk about it a lot, but then when we get down to the practicalities of what needs to happen, I think changing the systems and creating systemic change by establishing a new set of rights is something that can really deliver the change that we so desperately and urgently need.
I couldn't agree more, Kilian. Thank you for that. And if anyone's interested in knowing more about the Fundamental Rights of Nature Charter study, you can check out the link in the chat box. And you can also join Mamta and colleagues in Action Lab 1 very soon to learn more. So going back to you, Mamta, what does the EESC study propose, and how does it support other existing EU initiatives?
Okay, so in the study, we propose something new. a rights-based, whole systems, overarching legal framework to unify and create coherence between the different policies, laws, and initiatives, which, as you mentioned before, are currently in a state of fragmentation and work in isolation to each other. So central to our proposal is a reframing of the notion of rights and how they are held and enforced in society, as we can see in this diagram and along the lines that Killian already mentioned. So if we look at the diagram on the left, the three circles model of sustainability, our current sustainability model, where we have people, we have economy, and we have nature. But we have them as interlocking circles. So there's an assumption that they can operate independently of each other. But in reality, what we have in life is a bit closer to the model in the middle, which are the three concentric circles, because the only circle that can operate independently of the others is nature, because there is no economy without a human society, and there is no human society without nature. So what we have is a natural systemic order, a natural hierarchy of systems. And if we are to map on that a rights-based framework, as we can see in the current sustainability model, we have human rights, we have economic rights, but human rights are not enforceable against corporations, and nature's rights are not even in the picture. So if we were to come back to the middle model, we have nature's rights, we have human rights, and we have economic rights in a synergistic, relational, and ecosystemic relation to each other. So you wouldn't have a corporate right that would undermine a human right, because it would be unraveling the very system from which it derives. And you wouldn't have a human right or a corporate right that would work against nature's rights, because again, you're unraveling the source. It's irrational. And so the model on the right, if we are to map on these three circles, we make them three-dimensional. We add a fourth circle at the bottom representing the planetary boundaries. And we map the UN Sustainable Development Goals on the top three circles corresponding to economy, to human society, and to nature. What we have here is the integration of these well-known indicators that we already have, along with a rights-based framework for enforcement, where nature's rights includes, or it has embedded within it, human rights, and that has embedded within it economic rights, all acting synergistically to support each other. So currently, there is no legal framework to enforce sustainability or the planetary boundaries or the Sustainable Development Goals. So what we're proposing in the Charter is an actual legal framework to enforce all of this.
Thank you, Mamta. And yeah, speaking of legal frameworks, I'd like to move on to Marie. So how can nature's rights be brought into the EU legal framework, and how can these rights help deliver the Green Deal?
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. Thanks also to Mamta and Killian. I think this is really important what you achieved. And as we are talking here about oceans with all these beautiful images and this breathing exercise that you made us doing, I really do think that it's time that we think over what are the legal statuses of these global commons, natural global commons, and think over what do they need. And they have the right at least to regenerate and to be respected. And I think that this is something that we must understand, especially since we damage so much the oceans. So it's time that we take this page on. And of course, this is possible. This is possible in many ways. In the study presented by Mamta and Killian on the European Charter of Fundamental Rights of Nature, we already have a few different options. We have the option of incorporating the Charter in the EU treaty. We have one article for that, the Article 48 on the Treaty of Functionment of the European Union. But we can also have something, aside, a charter as an interinstitutional non-legislative act by the Council, the Parliament, and the Commission. Sometimes we pretend that we cannot do things, but we have actually some ways if there is a political will, and in that matter, the political will to protect the living and the ocean. But we can push for the rights of nature in many different other ways, because we can also have a large-scale legal reform that would integrate in all environmental European texts the rights of nature approach and its vocabulary. So it can be done within the directive on environmental impact assessments, for instance. It can be done on the directive on environmental liability or on the directives related to access to justice. We can work towards the right of nature in many different ways and have a political umbrella like the Green Deal is. The Green Deal is about changing 50 different pieces of legislation to reach our environmental goals. We could have the same with a rights of nature umbrella, which would, lead us to change all the different laws. Or we could also have something that I'm promoting for a few years now, which would be an environmental treaty, because we have a treaty on the functionment of the European Union. We have human charters, European Convention on Human Rights, but we don't have any environmental treaty. And this is also one of the initiatives that we could push for. But of course, for that, we need to reach out political majority, and this is something that we still need to work on. But I do believe that things are changing a lot, because we are calling now in the European Parliament for the recognition of the intrinsic value of the ecosystems and for granting a legal status to the ancient and primary forests. So one day we can do it also for the oceans and for the rest of the ecosystems.
Now, Marie, you work with Valerie, who was in the video we just watched. What progress is being made on ecocide in Parliament?
Well, this is a good question. Thanks for asking it, because we are making a huge progress towards the recognition of ecocide. We are making this progress throughout the world. I just want to point that out. I launched last October an international alliance of parliamentarians for the recognition of ecocide, and we are growing more and more numerous. So if there are some members of parliament here who want to join us, please reach out to me. It's moving in Brazil, in Bolivia, in Mexico, in different countries of the EU. So we don't have time to dig, but it's really interesting to see how things are moving now. In the European Parliament, we have also reached a few successes that are really valuable. First of all, the European Parliament called in January for the recognition of ecocide at the international level, so within the International Criminal Court, in a text dedicated to human rights. Last week, the European Parliament called again for the recognition of ecocide as an international crime in the context of the fight against biodiversity. And maybe someday we will also call for the recognition of ecocide in the context of the fight against climate change. What we see is that when we're talking about human rights or natural rights, as Mumta pointed out before, we are working towards the rights of nature and towards the condemnation of ecocide. But we also move towards the recognition of ecocide in the EU law, inside of the EU, and not only at international level. So in April, we were working on the liability, environmental liability of companies. And in this text, we are asking for studying the recognition of ecocide within EU law, within the EU territory. And we can do it, and we have an opportunity, because in the end of the year and the beginning of 2022, we will revise the directive of 2008 on the protection of the environment through penal law. And this is a place where we can push for the recognition of ecocide and compel the member states to write the crime of ecocide into their own laws. I have to say as well that, of course, penal law is a lot related to national law. It's really the sovereignty considered today as the sovereignty of the member states, which is a problem when we talk about natural global commons, right? Because this concerns us all. But things are also moving inside of the countries. We are working at the moment in Sweden, in France, in Spain, in the Netherlands, all places where we could have ecocide at some point. But things are more advanced even in Belgium, because Belgium was the first EU country to support the recognition of ecocide at the International Criminal Court level, and also is currently working on the inscription of ecocide in its own law. And if we move all together in the same direction, then we will manage to get ecocide into the law more quickly than we would have thought a few years ago.
Well, Marie, let's bring the Commissioner back into the discussion to understand the EU's position on nature-based rights and any plans for the future. So, Commissioner, previously we spoke of Mission Starfish, revamping ocean governance. What do you think of the whole systems approach of the nature framework? Rights of nature framework?
Yes, so I think a good example is our initiative on combating deforestation. A trade-based approach can be a faster win than developing new category of crime. But the fact is that we need effective tools and effective enforcement to protect nature, and certainly both tracks has to not to exclude each other. And of course, utmost importance here comes in access to justice. And therefore very important citizens and NGOs participation and of course their rights to bring legal challenges, including to protect nature. And I think this is a best way to guarantee the rights of people to obtain information, to actively participate in decision making, and of course take legal actions.
Thank you, Commissioner. So do any of our panelists have a question for the Commissioner? Marie, I believe you had one.
Yeah, if I can. And hello, Mr. Commissioner. Well, we have already met a few times and discussed about the rights of nature idea and concept. But as you just saw, we have here different studies, especially the one from the EESC and different other leads to recognize the rights of nature. I don't know if one of these leads impacts you more, and if you think that one of them could be interesting, and how could the Commission engage in such an initiative?
I think, as you know, Commission is always open to discuss and look what could be angles of engagement, and where we could begin. As you know, Commission has a right of initiative, and we always eager to give people more rights, to give, of course, NGOs their rights of having a chance of legally defending nature, because nature cannot defend themselves, and I think access to justice is a crucial.
Yes, access to justice is crucial. I want to say thank you to all of you for your input and contributions today. It's great to see this work being undertaken and energizing movement behind all of it. So how can we help influence a more robust protection of the ocean by giving it the rights it deserves? Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Danny. Bye-bye.
Danny.
Goodbye, thank you. Exciting day with the race arriving and finishing up very soon in Genoa. Now we'll hear from their mayor about upcoming commitments to a healthier ocean.
We are particularly excited to host here the arrival, the last leg of the Ocean Race Europe. And in 2 years from now, in 2023, we will host also the last leg, the grand finale of the All Around the World Regatta. Those two events are really important for us, together with the message that the Ocean Race is sending to the world. We need to respect the ocean, we need to protect the ocean, and we need to leave the ocean better than what we found. That's exactly our mission. And we, as a city of Genoa, are particularly committed to that, and we would like to step forward and to show everybody what we can do, what we are doing, and what we'll do in the future. First point, we are committed to increase the number of blue flags. As you know, in Italy, the blue flags are particularly significant because they include an area where the seawater is particularly clean and very well protected. Today, Liguria and Genoa got the highest number in Italy, and Italy got the highest number in the Mediterranean area. So we would like to continue to do that and having even more blue flags in our area. Second point, we are fully committed in 2025 to have the full city of Genoa with public transportation without emitting CO2 anymore. So green energy, fully renewable, that will be a big step, and we are fully committed. We are on the range to achieve the goal in 2025. And third, and this is really something that will put Genoa at the head of any other harbor in the world, we are fully committed in having Genoa as the first harbor that will be completely sustainable from the environmental standpoint. So all the energy in the harbor will be green, will be without any CO2 emission, and will be fully renewable. We are working on that. We are working also with the help of the European programs, and we are committed to do that in the next few years up to 2026. That will be a great achievement and a demonstration to everybody that we are not only involved in the program, but we are fully committed.
When we look a little closer at nature and its systems, it becomes very evident that many of the answers to our greatest collective challenges have been available to us all along. As Richard said earlier, the ocean is truly our climate hero. Unique biodiversity and coastal marine ecosystems play a key role in mitigating climate change. I previously caught up with Dr. Emily Pigeon, Vice President, Ocean Science and Innovation at Conservation International, who is an expert on solutions for coastal and marine adaptation to climate change and on developing marine-based approaches for mitigation through blue carbon. She filled me in on some of the opportunities Europe has when it comes to blue carbon. Dr. Pigeon, blue carbon has been hitting the conservation headlines recently. What's the importance of blue carbon ecosystems for Europe when it comes to climate mitigation and adaptation?
So blue carbon ecosystems are these very special coastal wetland systems that sit at the interface of the ocean and the land, the mangroves, the seagrasses, and the salt marshes. And I believe that they are the most super of the ecosystems out there. We've known this for years. We've appreciated how important they are for biodiversity. There's an amazing diversity of animals, everything from tigers and sharks to otters that live in these amazing ecosystems around the world. But we also now know they're really important for addressing climate change. These coastal wetlands are incredibly efficient at pulling carbon dioxide out of the water and the atmosphere and burying it in the soil below them. And they do this for millennia and have done so for millennia, which means that they've built up these enormous stores of carbon in the soils below them. And when we destroy them, that carbon dioxide goes into the atmosphere. In Europe, there are two main blue carbon ecosystems, the seagrasses and salt marshes. Seagrasses off the coast of Spain and the Mediterranean are some of the most carbon-rich seagrasses anywhere in the world, with many thousands of years of carbon built up below them. You have salt marshes all the way along the coast, including rich salt marshes all the way through Germany, Denmark, and up through Scandinavia. And these ecosystems really should be part of our global approach to addressing climate change. Europe is also where we really learnt about how these coastal wetlands are important for protecting us from the impacts of climate change. For hundreds of years now on the coast of Europe, people have recognized that salt marshes are very important for protecting them from storms, from flooding, and from erosion, and have learnt to use these ecosystems as green infrastructure. And that learning is really important for the entire world in understanding the role of blue carbon ecosystems for both mitigation and adaptation.
Wonderful. So do you see blue carbon opportunities in the EU when it comes to the European Green Deal and Paris Agreement targets?
So those two policy agreements, the Paris Climate Agreement and the European Green Deal, are really strong opportunities for the EU to start featuring blue carbon. At the moment, blue carbon isn't integrated into either the EU commitments to the Paris Climate Accord or into the European Green Deal. And conservation and restoration of these ecosystems and the climate benefit for both mitigation and adaptation is a real opportunity for EU in both those two policy arenas. And that's not just along the coasts of mainland Europe that we think of traditionally, but also along the extensive coastlines of the territories that belong to the EU all around the world. In these countries or in these regions, territories of the EU, some of the most vulnerable people depend on their blue carbon ecosystems, their mangroves, their seagrass, and their salt marsh to both protect them from climate change and to mitigate climate change. So integrating both the Europe mainland, but also across the world into commitments by the EU is a key next step.
Well, we appreciate you highlighting the importance and necessity of infusing more blue into the Green Deal as well as the Paris Climate Accords. Dr. Pigeon, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, it sounds like there is a lot of potential for blue carbon in Europe. If you'd like to understand more on blue carbon, you can join Emily in our Protecting Coastal Blue Carbon Ecosystems Action Lab, or find out more about verification of blue carbon ecosystems with Vera in another Action Lab, both of which are coming up soon. We're running about 10 minutes behind schedule, so Action Labs will begin just after our predetermined time. Now, before we speak again with the commissioner, we'll hear from two marine biologists on the front lines with their boots on the ground, or should I say their fins in the water, working to help protect blue carbon ecosystems, a nature-based solution to climate change.
Sea Forester is an initiative dedicated to restoring the forgotten forests of our oceans. Seaweed forests are indeed disappearing all over the globe without people even realizing it, and that is why our approach is to work directly with local coastal communities and their municipalities to boost the value of their coastal regions. Restoring these ecosystems can be a crucial step to mitigate climate change or even to alleviate loss of biodiversity in these areas. There are already dozens of efforts dedicated to develop new techniques to restore these ecosystems. Seaweed forests have the smallest restored areas of all coastal habitats, but 80% of all restoration projects are smaller than 100 square meters, and some of them don't last longer than 2 years. So that is definitely something that we at Sea Forester want to see changing. A lot can be said about kelp forests since they hold a lot of benefits to both the environment and humanity. They are actually valued at $1 million per kilometer of coastline, and this is most likely an underestimation of the real value. Kelp forests are one of the most productive habitats on the planet, and they harbor and feed a variety of species that some of them are actually high commercial value. They are also carbon sinks, and they are much more efficient at sequestering carbon than land forests. They also alleviate coastal erosion and ocean acidification, but perhaps the most important role of kelp forests is as a nature-based solution that could help mitigate climate change.
The Posidonia seagrass is the most important ecosystem in the Mediterranean shore. And here in the middle of Ses Salines Natural Park of Formentera, Ibiza, we can see the effect of the Posidonia, that every day is releasing a very important amount of oxygen that is evaporating the water. At the same time, is building up reefs that is protecting the shore from the ocean, and is the habitat for hundreds of species. Also, the Posidonia seagrass is one of the most important carbon sink that we have in the planet, and we call blue carbon. We are in a main tourism destination for the boats, and we witnessed an impact in the last years of the anchors over the Posidonia. So we have created an application, an app that is free in an Apple Store and in Android. And with this app, the people, when they are navigating, they will know very clear if they can drop the anchor without doing on top the Posidonia.
Sea Forester Cascais started in 2019. With very precise goals to identify the marine algae species that create seaweed forests and to what level they can contribute to the conservation development of the Cascais coast.
The project is being funded by the Portuguese government, and with the collaboration of Cascais municipality, we are testing what we believe is one of the most promising methods to restore kelp forests. The method was developed by scientists in Norway and Australia, and it's called the green gravel. We basically seed small rocks with seaweed spores in the lab. There they will grow for about 2 months, and then the gravel will be planted in the damaged reef where it can grow and establish full canopies. Right now we are testing the technique in Cascais, but in the future we do hope to use this method to restore larger areas.
This work translates further into namely our economy, local fishing, still an artisanal traditional in Cascais, which will have more biodiversity and higher stocks, or gastronomy with healthier sea products to integrate into our diets, or finally, into circular economy, the algae recovered from the beach is an excellent fertilizer for agriculture. Looking after our blue backyard, in turn, helps to look after the economy and people in Cascais.
Well, it's 30 years I'm living here in Formentera, and we have an NGO that is called Belmarí Association, and the most important goal we have is the education of the kids. We are doing this participating in real conservation project, and one of the things that we want to put inside their hearts and their brain is that it's very easy for human beings to destroy nature, but it's really difficult to restore what we are destructing.
It's really great to see how the answers are already here. We just need to protect them. Nature is the solution and has the solution, and we just need to understand how to live in harmony with nature. Restoration and regenerative practices are the key. The Ocean Race is also investing in blue carbon ecosystems and looking at being climate positive. The race is balancing their GHGs through a fantastic mangrove project in Madagascar. Now, let's hear from the Deputy Mayor of Cascais on where he feels our protection measures should be directed and the urgency of taking action beyond the idea of conservation.
Cascais is a municipality where the ocean represents half of our borders. Our relationship with the sea is ancient and broad, from fishermen to explorers, from investors to tourists, to our local residents. This ocean is, for many of us, the reason to be here. This is one of the reasons that for many years now we have invested in identifying, protecting and monitoring the environmental capital of our coast. We do this as a municipality, working close with conservation organizations, managing the best interest of nature and, above all, the environment with citizens' needs. Also, we promote a close relationship with scientific entities, always aligned with the EU marine directives. Nowadays, when we speak about the environment, nature and ocean, we are beyond the conservation topic. We must actively work to regenerate and reverse. This is what we have to focus on in the upcoming years.
Well, there we have it, and I couldn't agree more. We are beyond conservation. We need to regenerate and reverse. So what do you think, Commissioner?
I think that was put very well, and probably there were a lot of great speakers. But what's obvious, and I think what does not get enough attention, and I'm very happy that we raised it today, that the obvious solution for solving climate change, for solving most of the issues are there. We have to speak about healthy oceans, healthy soils, and healthy ecosystems. And that requires, of course, change of attitude towards them. I'm always quite upset when the whole debate shifts somewhere to technological progress, to nice and beautiful things which are not yet invented. Nature can do most of the things for us, and I think we have to rely on nature and we have to trust it. And I'm very happy that today it was very clearly raised.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us today, Commissioner. It's been really great to hear of the work that you're doing to raise the profile of the ocean's importance and give it a voice, just as we are trying to do here at the Ocean Race Summits. We look forward to following up with you soon and hearing about the progress that you've talked about today. So let's continue to strengthen our collective efforts to restore the ocean so your son, along with the rest of the next generation, will have a thriving ocean to enjoy when they become adults. Take care, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, let's hear from both the Mayor of Lorient, France, and the Mayor of Klaipėda, Lithuania, regarding their exciting commitments to our global movement for ocean health.
Lorient Agglomération est un territoire historiquement tourné vers la mer. Ses activités industrielles, commerciales, humaines sont intimement liées aux activités maritimes, à l'aventure océanique. Ici, les habitants sont déjà très sensibilisés aux conséquences qu'ont nos activités sur la santé des océans. À titre d'exemple, Lorient est le port d'attache de la goélette Tara qui, par ses expéditions scientifiques, nous permet de mieux comprendre l'écosystème océanique et la nécessité de le préserver. Lorient, ville aux 5 ports, à travers ses différentes activités, commerce, construction et réparation navale, pêche, passagers et plaisance, a l'ambition d'être pionnière pour devenir un port responsable et durable qui concilie les intérêts économiques, sociaux et écologiques. Ainsi, Lorient Agglomération s'engage fortement pour devenir un territoire d'innovation afin de lutter contre les effets du réchauffement climatique sur les océans. Pour cela, Lorient Agglomération va augmenter considérablement sa production propre en énergie renouvelable. Nous organisons un écosystème territorial afin de nous doter de capacités de production d'hydrogène vert permettant à Lorient Agglomération d'être demain un territoire de référence en la matière. L'implantation d'une ferme pilote d'éoliennes flottantes au large de l'île de Groix en 2022 va y contribuer. Et à l'horizon 2030, cette production correspondra aux 2/3 de la consommation domestique de la ville de Lorient. À plus long terme, entre 2026 et 2028, 2 parcs éoliens en mer flottants pourraient s'établir, l'un de 250 MW, l'autre pouvant aller jusqu'à 500 MW pour répondre à l'objectif national de 40% de production d'énergie renouvelable à horizon 2030. Notre horizon reste l'autonomie énergétique du territoire en 2050 et nous sommes fiers de porter ce message grâce à cette course.
Klaipėda has set a strategic direction to follow Europe's Green Deal and implement commitments to climate actions. We focus on sustainable solutions in the field of public transport and reduce the air pollution caused by it. Therefore, we are glad that in Klaipėda, a team of transport professionals, scientists, business representatives has created a very innovative electric bus dancer. Powered by electricity from renewable sources, each bus almost saves more than 70 tons of carbon emissions per year. So it makes our city greener.
Dancer Bus brings social mission to transform public transport to make cities a better place. With the help of innovation, green energy, and digital platform, we are sailing towards sustainability.
The vehicle contributes this promotion of the circular economy, shortening supply chain, buying components in Lithuania and European countries too, using recycled PET plastic to produce bus body. And I am more than sure that is just the beginning of our grid and green journey.
We have heard Welcome back, everyone. We truly appreciate your contributions to the Action Labs, and if you took a break, we hope you got a chance to stretch your legs. For those of you who participated in our Action Labs, thanks for your passion, expertise, and insight. We've jump-started deeper conversations about how each of us can take action toward elevating ocean rights in the global conversation. But we must not let it end here. We hope that you'll take what you've learned today and the new connections that you've forged with others and turn it into action that will accelerate the restoration of ocean health. As we work together to address the climate crisis, there are many elements of transformative action needed to reach a just transition from an extractive economy to a regenerative economy. To achieve certain global decarbonization goals, we must pay attention to the lives and livelihoods of billions of people who live in communities dependent on marine biodiversity and overall ocean health. Leaders and policymakers should focus on how this transition impacts vulnerable groups of people, especially low-income communities of color. At this moment, we have a unique opportunity to accelerate the transition toward a zero-carbon future that benefits everyone. Joining me first up is Justin Worland, Senior Correspondent for Time, who specializes in climate change and the intersection of policy, politics, and society. Justin, it's wonderful to have you with us today.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So now more than ever, many recognize the importance of climate justice and the need for real climate action. Can you share some specific examples of ocean justice from your recent reporting?
Yeah, well, I think the story that comes to mind is a trip that I did to Fiji in 2019, where I met with leaders from Pacific Island nations, as well as with locals, particularly in one town, Vunidogoloa, who had to relocate because of rising sea levels. And what was really most striking, I think, about this trip is that we're talking about places where people have lived in harmony with the ocean for as long as these towns and places have existed. They've lived in harmony. They've relied on the ocean for sustenance. It's a part of culture in these places. And as a result of things that are happening that are largely totally out of their control, actions of people in the global north burning fossil fuels, that way of life is now under threat. And so it's a real prime example of climate justice hitting ocean communities. And I know this summit is focused largely on Europe. And so I just want to bring up, after I got back from Fiji, I had a conversation with one of the vice presidents in the German Bundestag about her trip to Fiji as well, and to that same village. And she talked about being moved to tears, visiting and seeing just the devastation in the abandoned village, and how that prompted her to lead, to push for more development funding for places like this. And so I think we need to understand that justice, that climate justice story, and I think it'll inspire further action.
Absolutely. Excellent points, Justin. So could you also share more insight about the intersection of policy and real life?
Yeah, this is a huge focus of my reporting. I mean, it's often that we talk about climate in terms of, carbon concentrations. We talk about things like, what is the carbon price, et cetera, things that are really arcane to most people. And it's really important to tie that back to real life, to real people. And that's what I try to do in my reporting. But I think it's important, in any context for anybody who works in this field. And oceans are a prime way to do that. As I was saying about Fiji, and the Pacific Islands, this is a place where people are really on the front lines and seeing these things that are happening now to them, but they're going to happen in different ways, of course, but they're going to happen to everyone. And so that's a great way to tell that story.
Definitely. Stories from the front lines. Now, what are some strategies policymakers can implement to effectively address climate justice?
I think the big thing that I always hear is engage with the local communities. And I think there are two really important reasons for that. One, if you're talking about communities, frontline communities that are facing climate or environmental justice concerns, you need to really understand what's going on the ground to try to fix that. So you need to talk to the communities to understand that. But there's a second key component too, which is if you engage with those communities, you're going to be much better. It's going to be much easier to build the political momentum to actually accomplish policy and make it sustainable, because you'll have that political support from these constituents. And so I just say over and over, when it comes to climate justice, environmental justice, engage with local communities.
Yes, well, great points, Justin, and it certainly proves that we need more reporters like yourself out in the field, bringing these stories to the forefront so that our policymakers in the global north really can understand the implications of climate justice. Thank you very much for your time today, Justin, and I look forward to reading more of your brilliant reporting in the near future.
Thank you.
Now, I would like to introduce the chairman of the European Roundtable for Industry, Carl-Henrik Svanberg. Carl-Henrik, thanks for joining us. I hear that you and your family are avid sailors. What initially forged your connection to the ocean?
Well, thanks for inviting me here. I was born in the very north of Sweden, north of the Arctic Circle, and spent my first 20 years up in the mountains an awful lot. And that led me later to the interest in sailing. You see the same exposure to nature and the fantastic side of our planet. I love what Justin said when he talked about Fiji, because here's a people that forever have lived in harmony with nature and are exposed to troubles that we have caused in other places. And when I've sailed in Fiji, but we've also been up in like Southeast Asia, where there's so much populations and you see the devastation there. And even if it looks pristine and nice on photographs, if you jump in the water in Bali or Borneo or someplace, you will soon swim into a plastic bag or some trash, and it's just time to do something.
It definitely is time to do something. No one likes swimming in the ocean with plastic. So how does the European Roundtable for Industry plan to lead in the 2030 SDG goals and the Green Deal targets?
Well, this is an organization that gathers the 60 biggest companies of Europe. And we are there to give our best advice on how Europe should go forward in harmony with the planet and being competitive. And we are setting very concrete goals for us. If I take the own company that I'm chairman for, Volvo, we're saying by 2050 we need to have all fossil-free transportation. That means it has to be there in 2040 because the trucks, they continue for 10 years. That means we need to be halfway by 2030. That's 9 years away. It starts to be very practical and real. So we are totally, everyone in the roundtable is totally behind the green transition and making it happen. Somebody needs to speak up for the oceans now.
Yes, they do. So do you think industry welcomes better ocean governance and will invest in the recovery and regeneration of coastal communities and sensitive ecosystems that have been damaged in the past by industrial activities?
Well, absolutely. The thing is that not everyone is out in the oceans, not everybody sees it, but when you do, you realize it's time to do something. I know that Ursula von der Leyen will be with us, the President of Europe, here in a few minutes, and you will see how she also steps up for the oceans. If you are in industrial manufacture, you will depend on products coming in, raw material coming in, and finished product being shipped out. And unless you sell it in your own country, it's going to be shipped or sometimes air freighted. So we have Maersk in the European Roundtable educating us on supply chains and ocean trafficking. We have Airbus on air freight. So there is a total commitment that we have to find a way where we live in harmony with the nature that we can save for many, many generations.
Yes, and in the recent European Roundtable paper, Making the Most of Europe's Climate Leadership, it mentions a global level playing field. It's needed in a just transition to reach our climate targets. How can industry level the playing field for nature? And what do you think about the concept of giving nature and the ocean legal rights?
Well, to give the ocean legal rights is absolutely key. Every piece of land in this world is owned by a country or a company or a private individual that cares about it. Nobody owns the ocean, it's everybody's. But that means that it doesn't have a voting right. We are living with level playing fields in everything we do when we speak up for it when it comes to competition, that nobody's giving rights that takes advantage of somebody else. That concept is very close to home for us. And of course, we are behind, as I said, to make sure we do our part now in getting it right with the oceans.
Well, thank you very much, Carl-Henrik. I look forward to seeing how the European Roundtable of Industry will take a lead in ocean protection and climate action, as you've mentioned.
Thank you, so do I.
Now let's hear from Minister David Parker with a message from New Zealand.
The Pacific region, which I'm from, 96% of the area of this part of the planet is water. And we're facing some pretty considerable challenges, not just there, but elsewhere. There are so many different challenges, from plastic waste, occasional container floating around that you don't want to hit when you're coming out this way. In addition to changes to biodiversity caused by fishing pressures, by land-based pollution and its effect on the sea, and of course the effect of changing water temperatures and pH levels caused by climate change. None of us can overcome these issues by ourselves. We all have to cooperate together to overcome them. And we really look forward to working with our European partners, our Pacific partners, and every other country who's involved to try and address some of these long-term issues. If I could mention one in particular, sometimes we're called the large seabird capital of the world because so many of the albatross and large petrels that fly the southern oceans nest in Antipodean Islands close to New Zealand. It's a sadness for us that we've seen some of those populations in decline. We're trying to do our best to reduce bycatch in our fishing practices. We know that in the case of the Antipodean albatross, most of the deaths are occurring outside of our EEZ to the north of New Zealand, higher up in the Pacific. So we ask you all to cooperate with us to get your governments to do their best so that we minimise this bycatch, so that we drive it out of the system completely, because otherwise we're going to drive the Antipodean albatross to extinction. I know I speak for myself and my government. I suspect your ministers and your government would feel similarly, that none of us want to be overseeing the extinction of any species. The Antipodean albatross, given that it ranges so far across vast oceans, is something that our people and your people can identify quite readily. So let's do all that we can to publicise this issue and to make sure that we save the Antipodean albatross.
Now we will hear from the European Commission's President, Ursula von der Leyen, who is leading the charge in Europe's blue-green recovery.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, the ocean race has now been sailing the waves for almost 50 years. The ocean is your arena, and every day you feel its unique strength and power. But you also sense and see its growing fragility. You've seen it change and suffer, and you are helping it to heal. You have been removing plastics from the ocean. You have been tackling pollution with your own hands. You have been raising awareness on ocean rights and campaigning for action on overfishing. I very much welcome the fact that this summer several teams will carry scientific equipment on board. This will help measure microplastics in the water and collect data about the impact of climate change on the seas. Although the ocean can produce a mighty roar as its waves crash on our shores, it has no voice in our public debates. So I salute you for speaking up for it at events like today's summit. Like you, the European Commission wants to see an ocean that is healthy and full of life. Biodiversity loss is one of the greatest threats to our planet and to human health. Our seas and oceans are a particular concern. They are our most natural ally in the fight against climate change. and they are the first to feel its effects. And that is why last month the Commission set out a new approach for sustainable blue economy in the European Union. Because in addition to having a crucial role in regulating our climate, the ocean's rich biodiversity provides us with essential goods and services. It is critical for energy production, for tourism, for transport or trade. The blue economy provides 4.5 million jobs in the European Union alone. But for a sustainable future, all blue economy sectors will have to reduce their environmental and climate impact. Because tackling the climate and biodiversity crisis requires healthy seas, and we have to make sustainable use of their resources. And this is why we are also promoting across the world the EU's expertise, environmental action, and innovative business solutions. To support this, I can announce that we will update our international ocean agenda next year. The Commission will lead efforts on a global agreement on plastics, and it will embed a circular approach across our economy. Ahead of this year's crucial biodiversity COP15 in China and the climate COP26 in the UK, we will also focus our diplomatic energy on protecting our oceans. For example, the EU and its member states are proposing to establish 2 new large-scale marine protected areas in the Southern Ocean. We will do this together with a number of like-minded partners. If approved, they would protect an area of over 3 million square kilometers. And as we head to Kunming in October for the Biodiversity COP15, we are working towards global commitments. Our aim is to protect 30% of our land and sea, a commitment we have already made at European level, and now we are also working to increase global climate ambition at COP26 in Glasgow. Europe has already committed to reach climate neutrality by 2050. It is our historic duty to reduce emissions and pollution, to bring us back into balance with the limits of our planet. In Glasgow and in Kunming, we want to see even more international partners joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, as you race with purpose across our ocean, we too race with purpose towards net zero. Let us sail together, and let's hope for fair winds. Thank you.
As we've heard, a just transition is the wave of change the world needs. With collaboration between leaders like EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, talented journalists like Justin Warland, and heads of industry like Carl Henric, we can begin to shine a light on the nature-based solutions that can turn the tide toward an equitable and fair transition to an economy that respects both people and the planet. Now, before we finish up, and I'm joined by Richard again, we would like to give a final word, the final word, to the youth from around the world who have a very strong and clear message for our world leaders.
My biggest fear when it comes to climate change is that ocean acidification will get to the point of no return, and marine life will no longer be able to survive.
The high loss of marine biodiversity, from seagrass to whales.
My biggest fear when it comes to climate change is rising sea levels.
The Arctic is likely to become ice-free, and with that, we will continue to experience more extreme weather conditions that are connected to loss of polar ice, and this can lead to crop failure and food security issues in regions that heavily rely on rain-fed agriculture.
My biggest fear when it comes to climate change is losing the beautiful islands where my ancestors lived for centuries, and at the same time losing our customs, our language, and our traditions.
My biggest fear is that we are going to leave the most vulnerable in our society behind.
What's going to happen with those 200 million projected climate refugees by 2050? With limited natural resources, including fresh water, and mass migration across borders, Will climate be a reason for armed conflict in the 21st century?
I want world leaders to recognize that we are currently going through a climate emergency, threatening ourselves and our oceans.
I demand world leaders to strengthen their Paris Agreement targets and reinforce climate commitments.
We must call on policymakers to call for complete global decarbonization and to preserve 30% of both land and water by 2030.
And ensure that governments are taking action on a local level to prevent trash and other waste from entering the waterways, and as a result, addressing ocean pollution and addressing climate change.
Our world leaders have no choice. They must bring in laws and policies that are going to protect our ocean and thus protect us.
Although some policies may seem unpopular at first, they are necessary and should be undertaken to give us a chance of surviving as humans and as part of nature as a whole.
Not only must we preserve the nature that's left, but we must restore and reintroduce this habitat.
If world leaders include indigenous people in the dialogue about climate change, we would be able to find better solutions for those in need.
Applying nature-based solutions is the only way that we can reform humanity's relationship with nature and sustainably balance human, economic, ocean, and climate health.
If only world leaders take action on conservation of coastal and marine habitats and biodiversity, we shall be preserving the health and resilience of marine ecosystem with balanced protection and production to achieve prosperity as we strive towards attaining favorable climatic conditions for the human and nature.
If world leaders act upon this, we secure a livable planet for generations to come.
I want world leaders to stop talking about it. Act and react.
By doing this, we can stop damaging and killing our planet and start to care for it as much as it cares for us.
Wow, such wisdom and brilliant words. What do you think, Richard?
Well, it's so powerful, Danny, and the youth really know it's time now, time to act, because it's their future at stake and we can't let them down.
Definitely. So after today, what are the three main things that you'd like everyone watching to remember?
Wow, I'm totally energized and full of ideas, so I cannot sum it down. But if I just pick three immediate takeaways, I'd say the first one is that we hear business is now calling for a level playing field with nature, and they support giving the ocean rights, which is truly a potential game changer for all of us. And secondly, the commitments we heard from mayors across Europe and specific projects such as growing the seagrass, which we see in other parts of the world as well. That's really, really positive. And thirdly, hearing from the president and the power of everyone joining us here today, bringing in different perspectives, that is something that tells me we can do miracles together. So I'm really positive. I have a bunch more, but I won't take the time to tell them now. But because we are at the end of the summit, unfortunately, and we are at the same time at the start of the beginning, and our next Ocean Race Summit is coming up soon. It's going to be in Auckland, New Zealand in the beginning of October. So just on behalf of my colleague Johan Salén, everyone at the Ocean Race, many thanks to all of you. Thanks to the President, the Commissioner, all the speakers and facilitators, and host cities, teams, everyone taking part, and the summit team led by Johan and Lucy are all world class. And in particular, I want to highlight, our partners and Wendy Schmidt and 11th Hour Racing. You are showing the way continuously. Thank you for that. And thanks very much to you, Danny, our outstanding host. And as we all leave now, I want you to remember to stay positive, because the future is bright. There is the solutions for it. But now it's really time to act.
Well, as the winds pick up here in California, we know that it's certainly time to act. We have no more time to waste. If we want to transform our ability to protect the ocean, acknowledging fundamental ocean rights is an effective place to begin. Our lives and livelihoods are inextricably linked to the health of the ocean. Through nature's rights and ocean governance, we can move beyond viewing nature as merely just a resource to be exploited, but instead see it as an integral part of our existence that deserves to be honored and conserved. Through community and connection, every single one of us can contribute to the vision and help lead us toward a future where humanity finds a way to heal our relationship with nature through regeneration and restoration. I'd like to extend gratitude to all of our speakers who contributed their expertise and knowledge today. We are truly thankful for their leadership. We also greatly appreciate every single person who tuned in virtually. Thank you for all that you're doing within your communities to take care of our ocean. It will take all of us to restore it back to health because every action counts, no matter where you're from, your age, or status. It's not too late. There is so much left worth protecting. The ocean is beckoning us, you and I, to step up to the plate and be the real leaders that cultivate positive change for our blue planet. Let us continue to fuel a culture of ocean optimism, where we choose to drive forward nature-based solutions rooted in science, and encourage more people to dwell on the countless ways the ocean connects us all. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting today's summit. We hope you'll join us for networking after the close, but if not, we completely understand. We truly appreciate your sharing your day with us. Until next time we gather, be well, everyone.